All right, so, hey, good morning. Glad you're here today. Welcome back to the Coast Melt group. They are back from Mexico, got back in last night. Excited for them. And there's something else happening that you may not know about. Are there any 3rd through 6th graders in here this morning that are excited about Mega Days tomorrow? Listen, we go to camp tomorrow. It's going to be great. We've got 62 3rd through 6th graders from our church going. There's going to be 100 of us, 101 of us, I think, if my numbers are correct. But I kind of quit counting after about 85 that are going to go with us and be at camp with us. And we're really excited about that. Sounds like an echo, Dalen. I can't tell if it's an echo or if it's just not coming from this speaker. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay. If y'all can hear me, I don't care if I can hear myself. So that's good. I want you to imagine a small kind of church, a foyer where everybody has to go through to get into the church. And a little boy walks in one day, he's about 7 years old, and he stops before he goes into the actual auditorium, and he's focused on a plaque that's on the wall. And he's looking at this plaque on the wall, and he just kind of stands there for a long time until one of the older men in the congregation come up to him. Alex, what are you looking at? He says, I'm looking at this plaque. Well, what is it? He said, oh, well, that plaque right there, that's in memory of some of the young men and women who died in the service, and just our way to memorialize and remember them. And they both stood there kind of somberly for a few minutes looking at that plaque, and finally the little boy with a quiver in his voice, did they die in the first service or the second service? So this morning, I want to talk to you about worship. And I want to talk to you about not only what we do in here, but what we do out of here. Because sometimes we think worship is only what happens in this room, only what happens, and worship is so much more than that. So I've got a question for you to start with. And the question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, don't say this out loud, but on a scale of 1 to 10, I really want you to come up with a number. How is your worship to God? If you said in your life right now, how is your worship to God? You had to rank it, 1 being low, 10 being high. What would you say? Doing pretty good? Not so good? About a 7. I'm hanging in there. Because a lot of times when people ask us about worship, hey, how was worship? They're referring to what happens in this room. And they're talking about, hey, how was worship this morning? And we start thinking, it was okay, but they didn't sing any songs I liked. It went kind of long. We were about 10 minutes over what we normally are, and that really kind of messes up my lunch plans quite a bit. Preacher wasn't too good today. Worship wasn't too good. That's what we normally think about when it comes to worship, when we spend time thinking about worship, and we don't want to think about so much, or we don't think about very often, our own worship. And what I want you to do this morning is to switch your mind from what happens in this room when we all come together in worship to what happens when you go before the Father in worship. Sometimes that happens here. Sometimes that happens out of here, but it can't just be here. And so as we talk about worship this morning and spend some time doing that, think of that number. 1 to 10, where are you at on that number? And I know you're thinking, well, when we talk about worship, we're talking about church, because after all, we call this worship. Hey, Bible class at 9:40, worship at 10:30. We think about this as being worship, but can I just say that when we're talking about worship, this is one of the weakest places to worship. Hear me out. This is one of the weakest places to worship. You come into a place where everything is set for you. The air conditioner is set to a good temperature where we're not burning up outside. The songs, they're already chosen for you. What's going to happen in the worship service, it's already done. You don't have to worry about it. All you do is either sit and participate or sit and watch. Even the words to the songs you're going to sing are on the screen for you. This is not a real hard place to worship. People around you are singing the exact same songs that you are. But while we come here and we worship on Sunday, I want you to think about how worship is authenticated on Monday and on Tuesday. When you're at your job and you make choices of whether or not to honor God in the decisions you make. When you're at your home and you're making choices about how you're going to live. Worship is authenticated on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. When you're at your school, when you're hanging out with people, when they're choosing all sorts of ways to live and to choose to how they're going to live their life, and you say, I'm going to do that or I'm not. I'm going to follow the pattern of this world or I'm going to follow the ways of God. Worship is authenticated on those times outside of here, where worship gets a lot more difficult. When everybody's looking at you. And you could cheat the numbers and make more money. Or you could cheat the assignment and make a better grade. Or you could be dishonest and keep yourself out of trouble. That's when worship becomes a lot more difficult. The people around you aren't singing the songs anymore. They're singing a different song. And you've got to choose, am I going to worship God by living my life in a way that honors him, or I'm going to choose to just do what everybody else is doing? But worship, when you think about it, is that it's an expression of your love to God. It's saying to God, I love you. It's saying to God, I want to live my life for you. It's not just coming in and singing songs and I like them or not. Oh man, we're late again this Sunday. We've got to start getting better at this. Worship is how you live your life and what you choose to do. See, if worship was just about a song, we'd all do pretty good. Almost every one of us in here probably has a worship song we like better than others, or at least a set of worship songs we like better than others. But your worship is not about a song. And God says, I don't just want your worship song, I want your worship life. And so the question this morning is, do we want to give him our worship life? I want you to worship this morning and for the rest of your life with wisdom. And not worship just from a place of ritual. Not just worship from a place where I come in and everything's chosen for me, and so, hey, I'll do all this stuff, and hey, I did a really good job this week. God, you should be thankful for me because I was worshiping so well. So here's what I want you to think about. Think about the word knowledge for a second. Knowledge is that idea of knowing facts and information. We know what worship is. Like, we can understand that our worship is living before God. It's honoring God. It's singing before God. It's praising before God, and it's so much more than just a song. We understand what worship is, just like you may understand other things in life. You have knowledge base that you work from. But I want you to think also about if you just have knowledge and that's all you're worshiping from, then we're not really worshiping with our lives the way God's called us to. We're just worshiping from our head. It's just in our head. It's not in our heart. But I want you to think about what happens when you add understanding to something. When you add understanding to something and you understand the perceived meaning of something, you understand, okay, I have the knowledge of what worship is. I want to add understanding to that. Let me give you an example. I think all of us know you're not supposed to text and drive. But if you go and you're texting and driving and you wreck your car and you're walking for 6 months because you can't afford to fix your car and you're either on a bicycle around town or calling friends for a ride, now you have wisdom. You have knowledge that you're not supposed to do it. You have an understanding that you're not supposed to do it, and you've got wisdom to go with you the rest of your life to know what that means. I want to worship, and I want you to worship from a place of wisdom, where you have knowledge about what knowledge about what worship is, that you have understanding of how we are to worship and what it means to come before the Father and worship, and then worship from a place of wisdom so that never again are you thinking that worship is about ritual. And never again are you thinking about worship as routine. You're never coming into this room and going, I don't know how it's going to be today. It's going to be pretty hard. Can I just say that sometime I feel like I'm begging our church to sing on a Sunday morning? And I know that no one means that. We're all coming in. It's hard to come from class or fellowship and that kind of stuff. So I'm not saying that as any kind of indictment. I'm just saying that when we come into this room, I would love for it to be something we've been looking forward to all week long, because we're not starting worship here. We've been worshiping all week long, and we come together with brothers and sisters in Christ, and we are going to just worship and pour our hearts out before God. And sometime our lives get busy. I've been there. And this is the only place we worship during the week, because everything else in our life, it just takes our time. But if you have knowledge and you add understanding and you worship from a place of wisdom and understand what worship is and what God has called us to, it starts to change everything. So see, we sometimes come before God and we say, I want to do better at this. I want to do better at my worship. I want to live a more dedicated life to you. And so we decide, hey, here's what I'll do. I'm going to pray. And so we have prayer in our life. And we say, I'm going to give my prayer to God, and God's going to be so pleased with me because I'm not just praying a little bit, I'm praying like every day. I'm praying every day before I do anything else, before my feet hit the floor. I'm before God praying, and that's a great thing, so don't hear me saying that. But we also think that God should be proud of us for what we're doing, as if prayer is for Him. Prayer's not for Him. Prayer is to God, but it's for us. It's to God, but it's for us. He doesn't need your prayers. We need to pray to him. We are the ones that need to go before God and to be in relationship with him so that we are praying. But sometimes we think, oh, God, look at what a favor I'm doing for you because I'm praying to you and spending time talking to him. You need prayers. You need that source of life. You need to come before him and be refreshed by the time that you've spent with him in a relationship that only can come through spending time with the Lord. And God answers prayers. And you need those answers to lead you, to guide you, to help you through the situations in life, the responses to prayers that God gives you. And you could experience those answers in so many different ways, but it's important for you to understand that prayer isn't for God, it's for us. All right, what about Bible? You say, Bible, I'll spend some time reading my Bible, and that's going to definitely please God. That's going to definitely make God honored. Because if prayer isn't for God, then definitely Bible reading is. And I want you to know, the Bible's not for God. He is the Word. He didn't have men write down things so he could go back and remember it one day. He knows everything that is in there. So the Bible is not for God either. The Bible is from God, but it's for us. It's from God, and it's for us. And there may be some time that we spend time reading the Bible, and we think, oh, I am really giving God what he deserves now. I am praying every day. I am reading my Bible 10 minutes yesterday. He ought to be pretty proud of that. We have that thought in our head sometime, and maybe it's not 10 minutes. Maybe you've got another number you had in your head, but we all tend to do that, and we kind of think, hey, maybe I can just honor God so much with my life and honor God so much with my time that he'll be fulfilled because I'm doing such a great job living for him. The Bible, it's not for him. It's from him, but it's for us. You're the one that grows by spending time in the Word. You're the one that grows by spending time in prayer. All right, what about giving? Another thing that we think of worship sometime is giving. So when you think about giving and you say, hey, God, it was really hard today, really difficult for me to give, but I did it. God, I want you to know where my treasure is, there my heart is also, and I gave it to you today. Listen, God doesn't need your money. Heaven says the streets are paved with gold in heaven. And so we really sometimes come and think that $147 is going to make a huge difference in the kingdom. God can do whatever he wants to with anyone's money and however he wants to do it. Giving is not for God. Giving is to God, but it's for us. It's to God, but it's for us. When you give, you are changed. When you give, God can use it in powerful ways, and you can see how it's been used. You can look at churches, you can look at ministries, you can look at people who have given financially to change the world, and it happens. And we're so thankful when God lets us do that, and God allows us to be a part of things like that. And there may not be very much that makes us more like God than when we give, because he is giving in nature. And we step outside of ourselves and we decide that we want to be generous. Oh, but what about worship? If prayer is not for God, and giving is not for God, and Bible reading is not for God, what about worship? Here's what I want you to know about worship. If you let this will change how you worship. Worship is for God from us. Worship is for God from us. So when we come and worship, and we look at who he is, and we worship him with our worship life and not just our worship song. Every time we say, I love you, God. Every time we say, thank you for waking me up today. Every time we say, God, I don't like this pain, but thank you that I can feel it. Every time that we recognize who he is, we're doing something that is for God and not for us. We're blessed by it. We're changed by it. But worship, when you think about it, is the only gift you can really give to God. He doesn't need your prayer, doesn't need your giving, doesn't need your Bible reading. But worship, it is from us and it is for God. Now, it may sound like a bit of a stretch for me to say it's the only gift we can give to God. So let me explain a few things. Number one, God's given us a choice. You can choose to worship, you can choose not to worship. You may have chosen to do that this morning. I don't know. You've come in like, I'm not doing that, whatever. But it's a choice that we make. It's a choice that you make. No one else makes that choice for you. And if I'm honest, there have been times in my life when I have either by my decisions or by my actions or by my words chosen to obey my feelings more than my Father and have not been in a place of worship. So if I don't feel like it, I say, well, I'm going to allow my feelings to determine who I am. I'm going to allow my feelings to become my God for a moment over what God's called me to. It's a choice, but I'll need you to know also something else. God doesn't require it, but he requests it. He requests our worship. So let me give you a definition of worship that we can kind of work from this morning, and it's this. Worship is our love expressed to God as a response to his grace toward us. Think about that. Worship is our love expressed to God as a response to his grace toward us. All right, so if you haven't been listening yet this morning, start listening right now because it's about to start getting really important. Because when you think about this, what is the thing that we are supposed to express here? You can answer. What's the thing we're supposed to express? Love. We're supposed to express love. That's what we express to God. And so it's not our song necessarily that we express, although our song may help us express our love to God. And so when we come in and say, hey, it's all about a song, that's our worship, we're missing out on so much of it because it's supposed to be not from a place of ritual. It's supposed to be a place of the heart. That we come before God and we say, God, I love you. God, I worship you. God, I want to serve you. God, I want to be yours. So the key ingredient here is love. What's the key action word? It's the other one, yellow one, by the way. Expressed, yeah. So how have you expressed love to God lately? How have you come before God and expressed your love to him in a way that worships and adores him outside of this room? How have you expressed your God lately? See, we're really good at expressing love towards things that we love and that we value. And so it may be that you have a job that you love and you express your love to your job by spending too much time focusing on that. It may be a hobby that you express your love for and you spend too much. It may be some crazy kind of technology or convenience and you just love it, you talk about it, and it's how great it is and how much it's changed your life. Maybe it's a sport. You follow a sport or you play a sport and that is your love, that is your passion, that is your... Listen, I know that there are communities in America that would understand what it means for someone to express love to a sport or to an activity or to a team. We probably don't get that here. We probably don't understand that very much. But I want you to see when we get things out of perspective, and those things aren't wrong. We need to work at our jobs. We need to love the people around us. We need the things in our life and value those things. It's fun to look at a sport. It's fun to look at our team, follow them, be all excited about that. That's great, but our excitement level and our expression of love, if we're not careful, can come before our love for God. And if we were to look at your life and say, what do you love more? Do you love that or you love God? Hands down, everybody would say, you love that more than you love God because we see how you live. Those things aren't bad things, but let me take it a step further. What if it's your family, loved ones that you have, brothers and sisters, a parent, kids if you have kids, a spouse if you're married, and you're looking at those things? We express love to them, and that's a really good thing. But we live in a culture where there's a lot of families that idolize their children. Decisions are made on behalf of the kids, or the kids make the choices instead of the family making the choice of what's best for them. The kid doesn't want to do something, therefore we're not doing it. And if we're not careful, we'll let our love expression to our family be more valuable, more pronounced, more lived out than our love expression for God. Again, those things aren't wrong. Loving our family, obviously, that's a good thing. We need to do that. But we can, like anything else in life that's good, we can let it become an idol before God because we value it too much. We love it too much. And so all of a sudden, I'm not trying to do things wrong, but I find myself ignoring God because I'm trying to love my kids better, and I should try to love God more, and then I'm going to love my kids more out of that. See, we can look at this and we can say, oh, well, now I have the knowledge I can do this. But if we're not careful, again, we'll relegate our worship to ritual. We'll relegate our worship to just showing up on Sunday morning and singing a few songs and walking out. And God doesn't just want our worship song, he wants our worship life. And worship is love expressed to God. See, God's not in heaven standing there going, I need your worship. I get power from your worship. I can't do miracles unless you guys worship me. He doesn't need that, but he requests it. We act like God's powered up through our worship. We act like he's going to get some kind of ability he doesn't have. Listen, he's God if we worship him or not. It doesn't matter that he is going to be God. The Bible says if we don't worship, the rocks will cry out, and the trees will cry out, and the ocean is going to worship him. But as a good father, he's not requiring worship. He's requesting it. And worship is the only gift that we really can give God. I'll give you an example. Think about a young kid that you have. Envision one of my kids being maybe 5 years old or something, and they're come up to me, and we're talking about things like, things are going, and they just stop and say, Papa, what can I do for you today? 5 years old, kid coming up, what can I do for you? And you say, wow, thank you. That's so thoughtful of you. Because listen, what can they really do for you? Everything that my kids had at the age of 5 was mine. Everything that they had was something that I had given them or something I had helped them. The house they live in was mine. The clothes they wore were mine. The toys they played with are mine. The stuff that they call their own is still mine. The baseball glove they're playing with is mine. Can you hand me my shoes? Whose shoes are handing? I'm handing you my shoes, even though you're the ones that are wearing this. We are the ones that, as a young age, I want you to think about what that would mean. What could my kids do for me? As they get older, they get a cell phone. Hey, can you hand me my phone? Wait, whose phone is this? That's my phone that I'm letting you borrow for a little while and let you use while you're in school. Pull up to the house. Whose house is this? It's my house. It's not your house, even though you're the one that pulled up to it in the car that's mine that you're now driving. I want you to think about how we do this sometime and think about for a second your young kids. 5-year-old kid. I want to submit to you that there's really not much they can give to you except for adding to the bills other than gratitude. But when your 5-year-old looks at you, says, Papa, I love you. Thanks for what you do for me. That will melt your heart and take your breath away. Because everything they have is something that's mine. It's the same way in our relationship with God. There's not things we can give to God that are going to change him. But when we go before God and we say, God, I love you. And I thank you for who you are. And I thank you for what you do for me. And it makes me wonder, have we done that this morning? Or have we come in out of ritual and routine, maybe even obligation, and just sung some songs, watched some videos, getting to this point now, communion's coming, and then we're out of here. Because our lives are supposed to be worship lives, and not just coming and seeing God as someone to sing some songs to out of obligation or out of ritual. If my little kids can say thank you, even when they're little, for the things that their dad does for them, how much more do you think that God feels when his children begin to lift up their life and open up their mouth and make decisions with their heart? How much does that bless him? It is the only gift that we can give him. Worship is the only gift that we can give to God. I want you to see this. I want you to see it's more than just a song. It's definitely not just the 15 minutes before the sermon on a Sunday morning when we're all together. And yes, it can be about the Sunday morning. That's part of it. But think about sometime maybe in your past. You come in, you're standing. I think we've all been here. Words are being sung. Maybe you're even singing them. But the words that Jesus said from Isaiah ring true in our lives when he says, these people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. But our mind is focused on things other than God. What are we going to have after lunch? Man, How long till we get out of here? And our minds are everywhere but focused on him. And listen, I love worship songs. I really do. I love songs that honor God and that stuck in my head that I sing throughout the week. But life is more than a worship song. And you could never sing another worship song again the rest of your life. But if you live how you're supposed to live, your life is more valuable than 1,000 worship songs. Because it's not just about a song. It's about life. So Matthew 22:37, probably know it well. It's the verse, the greatest commandment verse, when Jesus says you should love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And people look at this verse and say, oh, this is easy to do. This is not an easy verse. I can barely love anything with all my heart and my soul and all my mind and do it all the time. But what helps me? What helps me do that is his mercy. What helps me do that is seeing his love for me. What helps me doing that is seeing God with an accurate view of who he is, that he didn't call me just to be a part of a church. He called me to be a part of a follower of his and increase his rule and his reign on this earth, to be made in his image, to follow after him and know him and see how good he is. All those things help me love him more and more. Those things draw me closer to God in worship. And when I can get past myself and get a glimpse of who he truly is, and get just a vision of how good and holy he is, it changes everything. And I'm filled with worship to one who's worthy of all of my gratitude. This isn't easy. We sometimes have to worship through disappointment. Maybe you're there right now. Maybe there's fear in your life, uncertainty of what's coming next, and we come in and we worship before God, even in our home or in our church building, and we come and worship him there. It's not easy when there's disease in our life looking at us, and we have so much uncertainty and lack of knowledge about what's coming next. When there's pain in our life. And those are times we remember verses like Psalm 91:1. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. He's my God, and I will trust in him. So Romans 12:1. Romans 12:1, you know, Bible, you turn to it, page 975 in your pew Bibles, or you can just look at it on screen. But look at this. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's, what is it? Mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. And watch this. This is your true and proper worship. So hold on a second. So the components of true worship is in response to his mercy, the gift that he gave first. I should come to him, presenting my whole body as a sacrifice. In other words, God, you get all of this. You get every bit of my life, and I'm going to live this for you in worship to you. How I treat other people, how I spend my time, what I say to other people, what I watch on TV, what I look at on my phone or on my computer, my conversations at work, my conversations at school. You get all of this? Yeah, that's what this is saying. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice. But notice what it says before that. And here's my question this morning. Is what's in your view? Because it says in view of God, let's go back to that. In view of God's mercy. This is what we look at. Not in view of a worship order. Not in view of how many times can I go to church during a year. Not in view of any kind of obligations or rituals or routine that I can do, but instead looking at the one who gave everything for us and saying, God, I want to give you everything right back. Y'all, it's hard to do, but this is what he calls us to. And this is what he wants from you. And he is so good and so loving and forgiving that he calls us to that, but notice that word mercy, because when we fail, he continues to love us. He continues to show us mercy. He continues to forgive us so we get back up again and we can start loving him again. So what's in your view? What's causing you this morning to say, I will worship or I won't worship? What's causing you at home to say, I will worship or, no, it's fine. I'll just do it next Sunday when I go back to church. We think about view sometime and we just kind of think about what's ahead of us. We think about what's in front or what we can see right now. But sometimes our view doesn't need to be future view or present view. When it comes to God and it comes to worship, sometimes it needs to be rear view. To go back and look at the things God has brought us through. That's ringing a little bit, Dalen, if you can hit that down just a little bit. To go back and look at the ways that God has carried us. To go back and look at His mercy in our lives. To see His grace that sometimes I can only see by looking at what God's done in the past. See, when Paul's writing this is, you see the first word, therefore, he's referencing back to Romans 1 through 11. There's so much there about what God's mercy is. So if you want to read it, go back and read Romans 1 through 11, and you'll see what Paul's talking about. We're just going to assume that you understand mercy this morning and understand that it's a gift from God and God alone, not anything you can earn, not anything you deserve, but it's something that He has given to us. See, there's sometimes when I come into worship on a Sunday morning or maybe a Thursday at my house. I'm like, what is God going to do? How is God going to get me through this? I'm facing something in life that I don't know how to get past. God, I got no one but You, because there's no way I can do this on my own. And it's in those times when we look and we say, I need to look in the rear view and see what God's done in my past, to see how He's brought my family through things, to see how He's brought me through things, to see how He's changed my life from not wanting to serve Him to wanting to serve Him with all my heart, to say, I want to live for You, but I don't do it because of me, I do it because of Him. And that's what can change your worship. God will deliver you from situations. God will deliver you from circumstances. God will deliver you from the most painful experiences of your life. It doesn't say He's going to make it easy, but He says He's going to be faithful through it. And His mercy is always going to be present with you in that. And you may be in a completely different situation right now. And you may be looking around and you say, I wanted this, but because this doesn't look like someone else's life, I want this instead. And what God's brought you through and what God's given you, you're not thankful even for that because you've forgotten about the goodness of God that brought you out of that situation that you were in. You may ask God to change your life. You may ask God to change your heart. You may ask God to save your life. You may ask God to save your marriage. You may ask God to save you from yourself because you make so many choices that are against Him. God, save me from my mind. Help me to walk with You. You can go to college, get more degrees than is on a thermometer, and get out of there and look at life and say, God, I don't have the job I want, therefore I ain't worshiping You. We can become so ungrateful. We prayed for that house, but now there's a bigger, better house we want, so I don't like this house anymore. I prayed for this woman that I would marry. I prayed for the husband that I would marry, but I just don't like it anymore. I'm praying for something else now. God's answering our prayers. God's living through it, and we are the ones that forget things. Do you remember all the things you've prayed for throughout your life and how God has answered those prayers? And probably every single one of us are living specific answers to those things in our life right now as a result of a prayer we've prayed and an answer that He gave. And instead of, because we're humans, instead of it being something that leads us to worship, it's something that leads us to apathy, discouragement, ungratefulness, because we change our mind. We think we want something else, and we don't see the ways that God's answered our prayers and brought us to the things that He has done. We need to remember, and maybe this happens only best by looking in the rear view, the things that God has done in our life, the things that God has brought us through, the ways God has provided for us, the fact that He's never let us down, even at times in the moment we felt like He had. And then His mercies are memories of what God has done for us, and they lead us to the throne room in worship. So in this verse, offer your bodies. It's a choice. You can choose to worship. You can choose not to. You can say, I will, but you can also say, I won't. And look at that. It says your bodies as a living sacrifice. He's talking about the whole thing, not just your physical body, but your body, your physical body and your soul that are so connected that there is no way to separate them except for death. That this joint life that we have with our body and our soul and our spirit, this integrated complexity of who we are, it's lived as a living sacrifice to God. When God made your physical body, God made your spirit as well. And God has not left you, God has not forsaken you, and God has called you to live your life, your spirit and your body and your soul, as a living sacrifice to Him. In view of God's mercy, what's in your view this morning? Have you looked at God's mercy and seen it lately? And has it caused you to be so thankful to Him that you just can't stop thinking about who He is and what He's done? That's how we ought to live. It's really hard to get there. But when you see who He is and you see His faithfulness in your life, you start heading in that direction. You start becoming closer and closer and closer and closer to God. In view of God's mercy, it's not just the reason that you should, it's the only reason you can. Because without God's mercy, we would not be anything. We're only able to offer ourselves to God because of His mercy. He's the only reason it's possible anyway. In view of His mercy, now, in the past, and His mercy that we haven't even experienced yet, that's waiting for us in the future. Okay, I don't know if anyone's ever given you some gift that you just didn't deserve before, some remarkable moment of grace, and maybe it's a possession or maybe it's just kindness and grace that they showed to you in something. But let's say someone comes in this morning and they say, hey, you know what, I just want to give you a new car. And they've seen something in you, they know something about you, they love something about you, and so they say, what do you want? And you start talking, I like this and this, I'd love it to be this color, and here's the kind of things I'd like in it. And they said, great, done. They hand you the keys. You walk out of here this morning, not only changed by God, but changed because you're driving new wheels home. And they say, it's all covered. It's in your name, taxes are paid, title's paid, registration stickers on it. It's all yours. Do you think it would be reasonable that when they give you those keys to stop and say thank you for that? And if they give you something like that, do you think it'd be reasonable the next day to call them back and say, thank you for that gift that you gave me. Thank you for that car. That is such a kind gesture, such a blessing in my life. It's gonna help me in so many ways. Do you think it'd be reasonable to call them every year on the anniversary of the day that they gave you that car and say, thank you? Or the day that you're able to give your car away to someone else because they gave you a car to have, and to call them and say, hey, because you blessed me, I was able to bless someone else. Thank you for letting me be able to do that. Is it reasonable to call them and express your appreciation? And if it's reasonable to do that, to say thank you to someone who gave you a $50,000 gift, then what makes us think it's not reasonable to say thank you to God who gave us everything? I can't believe that God gives us breath every day and we don't say thank you. I can't believe that we live in this grace and mercy and love that only He could give, and we come in with this apathetic attitude sometime in our lives. Grace, mercy, I don't care. I'm just frustrated right now because life isn't going the way that I want it to. That's why worship is not ritual. And worship is not routine. It's a response to the goodness and the mercy and the grace that God has shown us. It's not regimen. It's not rhetoric. It's not about religion. It's a response. And that's why, when you really think about it, that worship has nothing to do with this building. And we think, I'll worship when I go to church, but if you tear this down, you're still going to find me worshiping. And I love you guys, and we've been here for a lot of years, and I'm so thankful for a group of people to worship with and to go through life with. I think that God has blessed us incredibly when He gave us church as believers in Him, when He gave us a body of people. I hope you have relationship here, and if you don't, I hope you find it here because it is so valuable, and it is so good. But if we didn't have that, I'm still going to be worshiping God. And I'm still going to be praising Him with my life, because it's not just about what happens on a Sunday morning, and I don't just have to have a building. Cut out, check out. Okay. I don't just have to have a building, and I don't just have to have people around me. I love it when that happens, but I'm going to worship God all the time. There are too many people's worship experiences that are tied to a building or an organization, and that we have trouble worshiping when it's not a Sunday morning and someone saying, let's stand up and let's sing these songs together. Worship is love expressed in response to the grace that he has shown us. And worship is the only gift that you can give to God. So grab your communion cups. We're going to spend just a moment letting you express that worship to God in this time of communion. So a few years ago, on a Saturday night, stood in a church in Farmers Branch, Texas, next to Heather. We walked into that room not married. We walked out of that room married. And what would have happened at our wedding if I'd have said, girl, I love you, and I will let you know if anything changes? It would not go so well, trust me. It would not go so well. What if I told her I love her only when other people are around and only when other people hear that? But I never told her when it's just us that I love her. We're not going to have a thriving marriage. See, the times that I tell Heather I love her that mean the most to us, it's when it's just us. We're sitting on the couch at home. The day's activities are over. We finished everything. It's almost time to go to sleep for the night and get rested up for the next day that's going to hit us like a freight train. And we just sit and we just talk. And we can say, so thankful for you. So thankful for your love. So thankful to get to walk through life with you. But if I only told her that in front of you guys, I never told her that when we're sitting at the dinner table, after dinner's over and we don't want to get up and do the dishes, so we just kind of sit there longer and just linger and just talk and enjoy each other's company. If my love expressed to her was only expressed among a group of people, and I never tell her when it's just us that I love her, think about how that's the same that we do to God sometime. That we'll come into this room and we'll say, Jesus, we love you. But outside of here, no one sees that in our life. Outside of here, we're not living before the King in a life of worship, of love expressed to him. God's called us to do so much more than come to church on a Sunday morning, sing a few songs, go home, and feel like we punched our ticket for the week. He's called us to live life for him, that people would see the change in our hearts. That very next verse in Romans 12, verse 2, that we would be transformed from the pattern of this world, have a new mind, walking with God. So maybe it's time to get a new view of God's mercy. Maybe it's time that all of us, myself included, need to increase our worship for him and our living for him, to realize that he is the one worthy of all of our worship. And all the mercy that we have and all the grace we have is because of him and because of Jesus dying on the cross, and that we're forgiven because of that. So let's pray. Holy Father, thank you for who you are, and thank you for your love in our lives. And all the things we talked about this morning, God, they are sometimes so much easier to say than to do. And it's easy to say, that sounds really good. God, give us a strength tomorrow and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and every day of our life to live for you. Help us to be people that walk in relationship with you. Help us to be people that know you. Help us to be people open to your Spirit at work in our lives. And God, for times we don't understand what you're doing, help us just to trust. And in times that we see you calling us to something, help us to step into that and live for you. And help us, God, never forget Jesus and his love for us and his sacrifice on the cross, that he died in our place, that we're forgiven because of him, that he rose 3 days later, and God, one day we'll see you. We look forward to that day. So God, during these moments of communion, be with us, fill our hearts with your love, and help us to worship. In Jesus, I pray. Amen.